Tonight, the Prime Minister's new inner circle.
A bigger cabinet facing some big challenges.
We are responding to the caucus we were given.
Can the new cabinet tackle bitter regional divisions and a minority parliament? That issue is here.
Explosive testimony.
Everyone was in the loop. It was no secret.
A key witness points the finger directly at Donald Trump.
Prince Andrew steps down from royal duties over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
It wasn't an easy conversation to have.
After a rocky start, the Leafs fire their head coach. This is The National. It may be a smaller Liberal government, but today the Prime Minister unveiled a bigger cabinet.
One clearly focused on shoring up weaknesses, addressing divisions, and trying to push through Liberal priorities in a minority parliament. All told, Trudeau's expanded cabinet now has 37 members, including the Prime Minister himself. There are 7 new faces, like Mona Fortier in the newly created Ministry of Middle Class Prosperity, and Stephen Guilbeault, who gets Canadian heritage. As for Trudeau's core team, some key ministers stay put, like Bill Morneau in finance and Harjit Sajjan in defense. Some move around, like François-Philippe Champagne to foreign affairs, Bill Blair to public safety, while one star member gets a few key duties. Chrysler Freeland is now Intergovernmental Affairs Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, the first in that position since Anne McClellan about 15 years ago. Now, it may be a bigger team than in 2015, but it also faces significantly bigger problems. Rejected by big swaths of the West and reduced in Quebec, the Liberals face a bit of an uphill situation. David Cochrane shows us Trudeau's team to tackle it.
Justin Trudeau starts his second term a little bit older. And perhaps a little wiser after voters handed him a minority.
I'm very excited today to be able to get down to work the way Canadians asked us to in this last election, to pull together the country.
Trudeau is relying heavily on 2 senior ministers to do just that, most notably the new Deputy Prime Minister.
Today, I think Canadians appreciate that we face some big challenges at home.
Those challenges are evident in a family photo with no Alberta or Saskatchewan MPs. So Freeland will lead a Western response team that includes Dan Van Daal, a rookie minister from Manitoba, Jonathan Wilkinson, an environment minister from British Columbia, and Seamus O'Regan, a natural resources minister from Newfoundland and Labrador. Jim Carr, too sick to sit in cabinet, will be a special advisor on prairie issues.
I think what we need to do as a federal government, when it comes to the West and when it comes to all our provincial relationships, is really listen hard.
Pablo Rodriguez will be listening hard to the opposition. As House Leader in a minority parliament, he needs the votes of other parties to pass legislation.
I'm comfortable to working with everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, we're elected by Canadians.
Rodriguez is also Trudeau's Quebec lieutenant, a position that does not exist in any other province. But with Quebec's premier flexing considerable political muscles, Trudeau needs someone to deal directly with François Legault. And while Freeland is known around the world, she has no political network in Quebec.
I continue to be a proud Quebecer, but I will be very much engaged on issues of national importance as well as issues facing various provinces. And having Pablo at my side on engaging with Quebec will be a very useful thing for us all.
Trudeau took a month to put his team together. Their work starts now on many fronts. David Cochrane, CBC News, Ottawa.
And there was a touching moment today that had less to do with politics than determination and commitment.
The Honourable Dominique Leblanc, President of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada.
Dominique LeBlanc has been locked in a long, tough fight against cancer that forced him to step away from his cabinet duties earlier this year. And while he couldn't join other ministers for the walk up to Rideau Hall today, he was determined to be sworn into his new role as Privy Council President in person. His boss and colleagues clearly moved by his positivity and refusal to stay down. Now, do stay with us tonight. For more on this new Liberal cabinet, in a special edition of At Issue, we'll take a closer look at some of those political chess moves later in the hour.
Now to Washington, where a once loyal Donald Trump supporter gave damaging testimony at the president's impeachment inquiry. Gordon Sondland, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, said he and other officials tried to convince Ukraine to dig up dirt on Trump's political rival because they were acting on the president's orders. Sondland, a longtime Republican, got his diplomatic posting shortly after he gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration. But at the hearing today, loyalty was not on display. Paul Hunter was in the room when Sondland testified, and he tells us why it cuts so deep.
With all eyes and cameras trained right at him, the U.S. ambassador to the European Union and star witness Gordon Sondland walked in, sat down, and right off the bat asked the big question out loud for all to hear.
Was there a quid pro quo?
Was it the case that Donald Trump had wanted a favor for a favor from Ukrainian President Zelensky, an official U.S. favor in return for helping Trump politically?
The answer is yes.
In nearly 6 hours of, at times, riveting testimony, Sondland said he believed he was acting on Trump's orders in helping pressure Ukraine into, among other things, announcing an investigation that could bring up dirt on Trump rival Joe Biden. Said Sondland, the orders were indirect. They all came through Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. As Trump himself put it, said Sondland, talk to Rudy.
We all understood that if we refused to work with Mr. Giuliani, we would lose a very important opportunity to cement relations between the United States and Ukraine. So we followed the president's orders.
The early leverage included dangling a Trump-Zelensky phone call and an official visit to the White House, something Zelensky very much wanted as a signal the U.S. had Ukraine's back.
We all understood that these prerequisites for the White House call and the White House meeting reflected President Trump's desires and requirements.
Later, Sondland learned the White House was also withholding military aid.
I was under the impression that absolutely it was continued.
And, said Sondland, senior Trump insiders knew pretty much everything, including at different times the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and the White House acting Chief of Staff.
Everyone was in the loop. It was no secret.
So, Paul, I'm curious about something. At one point, Sondland was asked, are you a friend of Trump's? And he said no. It seemed odd because they have history. What was happening there?
Yeah, well, think about it. As you noted off the top, Sondland's a lifelong Republican. He's a big-time Trump donor. It was Trump who appointed Sondland to be ambassador of the EU, and yet here he was. You can imagine Sondland having to think long and hard about what he was going to say and how he was going to say it, but say it he did. He named names. He named Donald Trump, if indirectly. Yes, he noted he's got memory issues. He's not a note taker. He gets things wrong sometimes. But on the key point today, he was explicit. He believes he was acting on orders of the president in helping Ukraine carry out Donald Trump's complicated bidding. He was explicit on that. And you can imagine that's why Democrats tonight are saying this was a pretty big deal.
All right, more to come. Thanks, Paul. So Democrats insist Sondland's testimony advances the case for impeachment, but no surprise, Republicans have their own take. Susan Ormiston shows us how they are spinning it all as harmless, starting with the president himself.
Ready with his take, President Trump had but one headline for his audience.
You have the cameras rolling? I want nothing. That's what I want from Ukraine. That's what I said. I want nothing. I said it twice.
With bold notes, Trump restated what he told Gordon Sondland on the phone, repeating it 6 times here in a minute.
Now, if you weren't fake news, you'd cover it properly. I say to the ambassador in response, I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo.
That is what Sondland testified, except he said a lot more, that he understood explicitly President Trump did want something, investigations, but used Rudy Giuliani as a foil, and that the president's top men were in the loop. By noon, even Fox News concluded that Trump had a Gordon problem.
To a certain degree, took out the bus and he ran over President Trump, Vice President Pence, Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Rudy Giuliani, Mick Mulvaney.
Sondland said he kept U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo informed at every stage and was told that Giuliani was the gatekeeper for Ukraine. In Brussels for NATO meetings, Pompeo sidestepped.
I didn't see a single thing that I was working. Sounds like you might not have been. I was in meetings all day and haven't had a chance to see any of that testimony.
Sondland has twice refreshed what he remembered in his testimony. Republicans characterized him as a businessman turned diplomat who is now trying to protect himself. President Trump, touring an Apple plant in Texas, had his own conclusions.
Not only did we win today, it's over.
It's not, but a Gallup poll out today showed the president's approval rating ticking back up 2 points to 43%, the same as in mid-September before a whistleblower or any impeachment inquiry. And that has to be worrying Democrats, hoping that testimony like today changes minds. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
So here's what's next. Tomorrow, 2 witnesses will speak in public after reportedly making big revelations behind closed doors. David Holmes is a State Department official who told investigators he heard Sondland speak on the phone with Trump about pushing Ukraine to investigate Democrats, and that he heard both sides because Trump spoke so loudly. Fiona Hill, a former White House advisor on Russia, shed light on earlier stages of the alleged pressure campaign. CBC News Network will have live coverage starting at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Now to the scandal across the Atlantic. Prince Andrew is doing something that members of the royal family rarely do. He's stepping away from public life. It follows a disastrous interview that even his own PR person told him not to do. Here's Margaret Evans.
We go inside Buckingham.
It wasn't getting any better for Prince Andrew, far from it. And today he bowed to the inevitable. The Queen's favored son, allegedly, increasingly out of favor with charities and corporate sponsors lining up to drop him after that ill-fated interview about Jeffrey Epstein.
Do I regret the fact that he has quite obviously conducted himself in a manner unbecoming? Yes.
Unbecoming? He was a sex offender.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being polite.
And so, from Buckingham Palace tonight, a resignation letter of sorts. The Duke of York announcing he'll step back from public duties for the foreseeable future, with the Queen's permission.
I can't think of someone who's committed reputation suicide quite so fundamentally and so publicly ever.
John Arledge, who has interviewed the Prince, says he isn't surprised.
He is arrogant. He is entitled. He has a rather generous assessment of his own intellect.
And with Britain in the midst of an election campaign, his troubles even made it into the leaders' debate last night.
Is the monarchy fit for purpose? Jeremy Corbyn.
Needs a bit of improvement.
Mr. Johnson.
The institution of the monarchy is beyond reproach.
But the Duke of York clearly is not. In an apparent act of contrition, he said tonight he will do more than merely consider requests by U.S. prosecutors eager to question him about his friendship with Epstein.
Cooperating with the investigation would be the absolute least he could do.
Rehabilitation in the public eye, though, could be a long time coming. As for the Queen, she's clearly hoping to return to business as usual, outperforming her own public duties on a day that also happens to be her 72nd wedding anniversary. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Hong Kong police are still surrounding the university where about 100 pro-democracy protesters remain. That is down from the 1,000 or so young people barricaded inside since Sunday. Some tried to escape through a sewer but were arrested. As Greg Rasmussen tells us from Hong Kong tonight, others have come out on their own, knowing they might face some serious consequences.
Some of the protesters who had been behind barricades at a Hong Kong university had to be carried out, while others walked out on their own. They left behind this. once a stronghold, now one of several universities where classes have been cancelled indefinitely. Like this protester vow to fight until the end, while others have had enough and are desperate to leave.
I've attended twice, yesterday and today, but it's in vain. Yeah, I'm a bit upset.
Police have been seen viciously beating some people during arrests, but officials are offering new protections.
We will accompany you to the police station to make sure that the whole case is going to be processed peacefully, fairly, and humanistically.
Last night, police kept a tight grip on the university, but there were no new clashes. It's descended into a tense standoff with a heavy police presence out here on the perimeter and about 100 protesters inside refusing to give up. There are also fresh allegations of abuse of force, including complaints from a former British consulate employee living in Hong Kong. He alleges being tortured and questioned about the protests while on a trip to mainland China.
I've been shackled, I've been handcuffed, and I've been blindfolded, and then they start to torture, for example, like put me hands up, handcuff, and for several hours.
The Chinese Communist Party.
All of which led to fresh warnings from countries including Britain and the United States about the need to protect the rights of those living in Hong Kong. Complaints which were quickly rebuffed by Chinese officials saying this is an internal matter. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Hong Kong.
And we're back in 2 minutes with more news, including pharmacists in Ontario pushing to do more than just dispense drugs.
And Mike Babcock fired, why the Leafs head coach is out of the game.
But first, tributes are pouring in and memories being shared late tonight of John Mann, the front man of the Canadian group Spirit of the West.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm not at my best.
Those chords, that chorus, a Canadian anthem of sorts, played at lots of house parties, belted out at plenty of bars.
It's up to you, not me, to carry on.
John Mann was known for his lyrics and his high-energy performances on stage. But in 2014, the band's concerts took on a new meaning when Mann announced he'd been diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's.
Living with the knowledge that my life expectancy is going to be shorter by far.
Still, the band carried on with a series of farewell concerts in 2016. Mann reading his lyrics from an iPad. His wife, Jill Daum, said at the time, music helped him cope.
I really don't want that muscle memory to go because he loves performing so much.
Today, in a statement, John Mann was described as a man of uncommon courage, a loyal and beloved friend, a loving father and husband. He died today in Vancouver. John Mann was just 57.
American hardware giant Lowe's is closing nearly 36 stores across Canada, including its Rona locations. And Rona was once a retail giant, so this decision hits Quebec especially hard. Alison Northcott takes us there.
For some employees at this store in Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, the news was disappointing. People were crying, says part-time worker Claude Brunet. There are employees here with 20 and 30 years of experience who served with their hearts.
In a statement, Lowe said closing stores like this one is a necessary step to ensure the long-term stability and growth of its Canadian business. It didn't say how many jobs would be lost, but it did say some employees could be transferred to nearby locations.
Rona was a flagship Quebec retailer for more than 70 years until American hardware giant Lowe's purchased the company in a controversial $3.2 billion takeover in 2016.
The Liberal government at the time in 2016 should have stepped up and say, no way, there's no way we will accept this. This deal is not good for Quebec.
That deal included an agreement with the federal government with undisclosed commitments around maintaining jobs, a Quebec headquarters, and the Rona brand, says the former Liberal minister in charge of the file at the time.
We have to go back to the guarantees and ask the federal government, how are they going to make sure that those guarantees are maintained?
Quebec's current economy minister says beyond that, there is little the province can do.
Does the government have any recourse?
Zero. We have to be realistic.
Last year, Lowe's closed 27 Canadian stores.
What you see right now is an industry that is in big turmoil. So Rona is also impacted by that. Competition is intense. You also have the impact of the Amazons of the world.
The union representing some of the Quebec workers says the current labor shortage could help them find new jobs quickly.
The retail industry is lacking people to work in their stores. I've actually talked to some of the companies that are ready to hire most of the people.
The 34 stores across Canada will close early in the new year. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Let's begin in the Maritimes tonight as we look at developing stories across the country. Prince Edward Island will soon have some of the strictest vaping laws in the country. The new rules will restrict where vaping products can be sold, ban certain flavors, and raise the legal age to buy tobacco and e-cigarettes from 19 to 21. The highest age restriction in Canada. A bill passed second reading unanimously, but a third vote is still needed before it becomes law. The death of a 30-year-old Ontario man once again raising questions about the safety of stun guns. The province's police watchdog is investigating after the man died following a confrontation with officers in Mississauga. Police say they were called after reports of a disturbance confronted the man in a yard, and then during a struggle, an officer used a taser. The man was pronounced dead less than an hour later in hospital. And there could be traffic chaos in Metro Vancouver next week. The transit union threatening to shut down bus service for 3 days.
Ultimately, this is on the union. The blame lies squarely and fully with TransLink.
Both sides blaming the other as transit workers are vowing to begin that shutdown next Wednesday unless a deal is reached. BC's Labour Minister has urged both sides to get back to the bargaining table, but says at this point the province is not going to step in. Allegations of bribery involving a union and one of the big three automakers is one of the international stories we'll have for you in 20 minutes.
Coming up after the break, why some pharmacists in Ontario are making the case for diagnosing in the pharmacy. What the doctors think in 2 minutes. Welcome back. People who live in Ontario who happen to be dealing with minor ailments like pink eye or a skin rash may soon be able to go straight to the pharmacy for help. Pharmacists in the province are recommending they be allowed to prescribe and renew some medications. Patients like the idea, but as Cass Rusi explains, some doctors are not so keen.
Hey, Michael.
Brian Rhodes visits his local drugstore to pick up a prescription for allergies.
We also have another one that I can show you on the other side.
For Michael Demian, dispensing advice along with prescribing drugs comes with the job. But the Toronto pharmacist says he can and wants to do more.
I think pharmacists are just excited for the opportunity to use more of our education and be able to help our patients. Besides just, here's your prescription, here's how to take it.
In Canada, the scope of what pharmacists can and can't do depends on where you live. In Nova Scotia, they can prescribe for minor ailments like acne and cold sores. Alberta can also authorize antibiotics, and Saskatchewan can prescribe birth control and bladder infection medication.
But there are a couple other vaccines that we really should look at doing for you.
For Barry Kenyon, a visit to his local pharmacy is not only convenient, it's a comfort. He's caretaker to his ailing wife, so he's grateful for any bit of help he gets here.
They've kind of taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and been able to remedy her diabetes problem. They've looked after her urinary tract infections by proper prescriptions.
A lot of times we know our patients really well. We see a lot of our patients over and over again, much more often than any other healthcare professional. So having that type of convenience is really timely care for the patient.
But some doctors are worried, calling it a slippery slope. They say if pharmacists do more diagnosing, mistakes can happen. Doctors want to see hard evidence that the expanded role of pharmacists is working.
I actually really would like to see some method of evaluating the impact of the changes that have already happened. because I've not seen that happen, and I think it would be informative.
What do patients want? This professor believes doctors and pharmacists can collaborate.
This is in no way, shape, or form stepping on a physician's toes. We want to help optimize patient outcomes, and that's what we're here to do.
Michael, I'm going to take this.
In Toronto, Brian Rhodes agrees and feels pharmacists are underutilized. And he's pretty sure that this visit just saved him a few hours of wait time at a doctor's office.
Hey, take care. See you again soon. Bye-bye.
Cass Rusi, CBC News, Toronto.
And up next, At Issue is here. We take a closer look at Trudeau's cabinet, why he made certain picks, and what they signal about what his government plans to do going forward. This is Team Trudeau 2.0. It's a bigger cabinet, with most people putting on new hats, but perhaps most different is the backdrop. Since 2015, among the issues that forced their way into the spotlight, climate change, pipelines, regional divisions, and of course, the new reality of leading a minority government.
We recognize that this Parliament will be one in which collaboration, in which working with a broad range of parties and indeed stakeholders across the country is going to be incredibly important.
So what do today's appointments signal about how the Trudeau government plans to govern? And in the face of so many challenges, does it get the job done? Rosie's away this week, but At Issue is here for a special Wednesday edition. I'll try not to muck it up too badly. Chantal Hébert is joining us from Ottawa. We've got Jason Markusoff in Calgary and Andrew Coyne here in Toronto. Let's start with a short clip, folks. One of the big moves of the day, what Trudeau had to say about the appointment of Chrysler Freeland to Intergovernmental Affairs.
Our ability to work well together on these issues that quite frankly, touch national unity, touch energy and environment, touch relations with all provinces and all regions of this country is going to be extremely important.
And Chantal, let's start with you. To that point in your column, you talked about Freeland as being Trudeau's unity minister, in a manner of speaking. Does that signal, I mean, her appointment signal that this is going to be Trudeau's most pressing issue to deal with?
It's certainly going to be his most pressing issue if he is going to hope within the short time span of a minority government to advance some of the key issues on his agenda without actually making divisions worse in the country. But there's a bit of a new dog, old trick to this. Last time Justin Trudeau was taken by surprise by a game-changing event, that would be the election of President Trump. What did he do? He deployed, or he redeployed his team along the Canada-US lines. In this case, he has redeployed, and with the same minister in the lead, his army along the internal line on the unity front.
Right, and Andrew, how well does she do on that?
Well, in many ways, she's still the Foreign Affairs Minister, not only because she will still have responsibility for Canada-U.S. relations, but she's essentially the emissary of a government to a region of the country that it barely has diplomatic relations with. And I think she's hampered by there's not actually that much she can offer them, partly because the government is not going to retreat on some of the major files that have so irritated the political class, particularly in Alberta and Saskatchewan and the public at large. But also because the government is focused like a laser, it seems to me, and you can see it in this cabinet, on winning seats in Quebec. Their main objective in this parliament is to win a majority of the next government. That's going to be in Quebec, not in the West. You can see it in the 10 ministers they've appointed from Quebec. And so they're not going to do anything to jeopardize that either. So she can keep a lid on tensions. She can try and put soft words. She can try and negotiate with people. But I think their overriding priority, beyond even legislative accomplishments, is just making yards in Quebec.
And that raises, I mean, such an important point, right? And I do want to spend some time talking about Quebec, but Jason, I do want to hear from you just on, I mean, Andrew kind of raised the question of what she can offer to this ongoing issue. What is your sense of what Freeland could actually do to kind of bridge that East-West divide?
They didn't give much leash to her or to other ministers to say much about this. I mean, when they kept on diverting, when asked, they would say, you know, we have to listen and, you know, take into heart the concerns of all Canadians. We're here for all Canadians, when asked specifically about the West. When pinned down, she said they're going to do a very, very good job of listening. One of the tensions, as Andrew kind of hinted at, was that they have to not only win over they want to win Quebec, and they also have to win over votes to stay afloat from the Bloc Québécois and the NDP. And doing some of the things that Kenny and Moe wanted to do, the premiers in Saskatchewan and Alberta, which is basically implement the Conservative platform, is not going to do it. I think there was some craftiness in picking the chief diplomat, the foreign affairs minister, as in this role of chief minister for Western alienation. Basically, it's that diplomatic words are going to be important because we know from many grievances that Albertans and Saskatchewanites have, that if you say the wrong things, people have deep memories. It can be in a way like China or like Russia or like Trump.
But they also needed a face with a profile high enough to not be the face of Justin Trudeau. Because some of the federal arguments in this discussion are based on facts, and they're not getting through in part because they are being presented by Justin Trudeau, who has become a polarizing presence in many of those discussions. So I don't think they picked Chrysler Freeland so much for her talent for diplomacy as for her capacity to keep her cool when everyone else is climbing up the ceiling.
Since we're talking about Freeland's profile, Chantal, I'm just curious to think, her appointment as Deputy Prime Minister, what did you make of that?
Well, that is how, I mean, the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs is a second-rank minister in most governments, including at the time of the referendum. But if you add the title of Deputy Prime Minister, you're kind of signaling that this is the number 2 person in the government. So when that person speaks, presumably, she speaks with some notion that what she is saying is backed by her title and her influence. We'll see over the long run whether that is true.
It's an honorific, mostly. It signals important things, as Chantal says, but nobody can really describe the duties of a deputy prime minister. For that matter, most of the titles in the cabinet are honorifics. There's probably maybe a dozen ministers with any real responsibilities in the cabinet. The rest of them have made-up titles, made-up departments. They're basically there as prizes to be handed out to treasured demographics and regional groups, and rather than because of their actual responsibilities.
Okay, let's talk about Quebec, and Jason, I want to hear from you on this because it touches on the East-West divide that we're seeing. So 10 MPs, as we've mentioned, from Quebec seated around the cabinet table. Here's what Trudeau had to say about that.
We have an opportunity and a need to ensure a clearer, stronger voice amongst our great team of MPs from Quebec and cabinet ministers from Quebec to ensure that the messages that we're hearing from and the engagement with Quebecers is done in the strongest possible way.
So, Jason, clearly there's a strategy there. The question is, can he bridge the East-West divide if he has, 10 Quebec MPs around the cabinet table and not a single one representing a riding from Alberta or Saskatchewan there?
He did a pretty dismal job of regional representation entirely. I mean, beyond the fact that there were no ministers to pick in Saskatchewan and Alberta, he did basically the bare minimum everywhere else, just ticking one in each of the Atlantic provinces, one low-level minister in Manitoba, four in BC, no new faces, nobody in the West. He's just really interested in ticking boxes elsewhere. In Quebec, where he had the luxury of many MPs and wants to give priority to new voices and shine a light on some priority issues, he was going to. As Andrew points out, there's a real strategy to get more votes in Quebec. And that's going to be through, stressing climate change. I noticed that they weren't talking much about the Trans Mountain Pipeline like Trudeau had right after the election. And that's probably because a lot of environmentalists were really frustrated with Trudeau this week by not appointing Stephen Guilbeault, the former environmental activist, to his environment minister, something that would have completely inflamed tensions in Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Right, and so many of the questions that we did hear from reporters today who were from Quebec were on the question of why Stephen Guilbeault wasn't being appointed as environment minister. Chantal, what was your sense?
Mostly because anyone who has covered Quebec and Stephen Guilbeault knows him to be a moderate bridge builder and not someone who wants to burn down pipelines. And on that basis, from the perspective of the people who were asking, he would have been a natural for the environment portfolio. That being said, he is spending a much better evening as Heritage Minister tonight than if he'd become the biggest target in the new cabinet by being the Environment Minister. And one doesn't need to be the Minister of the Environment to have a voice at the cabinet table. But 10 ministers from Quebec versus 17 from Ontario. I guess, you know, you can't make up ministers from Saskatchewan and Alberta when you have no MPs. So it doesn't sound like it's that disproportionate, frankly. But you have to keep in mind that Justin Trudeau, at this point, leads the only still standing strong Federalist Party in Quebec, in a province that has been known to turn on a dime and where he will have serious issues with the current government of François Legault. So these voices, they're not just to be heard at the cabinet table to pull the blanket towards Quebec. They are also to be used to talk to Quebecers about a perspective different from that of the Bloc Québécois.
It's not just the number of ministers, of course, it's the significance of the departments. I mean, Quebec's getting foreign affairs, justice, treasury board, heritage, economic development. These are some pretty weighty portfolios, all things considered. And as I say, if you thought that there was any doubt about what the government's intentions were and where it sees its majority lying, they can be set to rest after today.
So as you look to the question of what this tells us about how this government plans to govern, Jason, let's start with you on that last question.
Well, this is not an entirely ambitious government with a whole bunch of things they really want to do, not like the last government where they wanted to, you know, cut income taxes, legalize marijuana, tackle assisted dying, start with climate change. You know, the crisis they have, they're going to try to put to bed with Chrysler Freeland the USMCA. They're going to work their way through climate change, work their way through pharmacare, and their big inflaming crisis, it seems right now, is the extreme tensions in the West and Quebec. So they're going to try to you know, solve that with many hands.
Chantal, final thoughts?
Okay, one, I don't think there are extreme tensions in Quebec in the way that there are in the West, and I've been to both places, so it's a pretty quiet place by comparison at this point. Two, if you're going to have tensions in the Liberals, you're better off with having tensions in the West where you don't have any dogs in the battle for a majority than having them in Quebec. I think this is a government that expects to be in an election in 2 years and knows that it can't afford to make mistakes, and that means that prudence is the best option.
Andrew.
One of the things Justin Trudeau announced when he first took power was that cabinet government was back. Cabinet government is not back. Most of the major decisions will continue to be made through the Prime Minister's office. A cabinet of 36 is a monstrosity. It may have become the norm in recent years in Canada, but Mackenzie King, you know, governed Canada through a depression and a world war with a cabinet of fewer than 20. Mike Pearson put in the welfare state with a cabinet of, I think, a couple of dozen. We don't need, most countries around the democratic world don't have cabinets this large and this bloated. What you see with this cabinet, as with previous cabinets, is cabinet that's been reduced basically to a kind of a representative assembly, a kind of a ceremonial body, really, with a few ministers who have actual responsibilities and the rest are there as window dressing.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to the At Issue podcast. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, and on our website, cbcnews.ca/The National. Rosie and the At Issue panel will be back next Thursday.
And next on The National, Israel's political paralysis continues. Why that country could be headed to the polls for the third time in a year. We'll be right back.
I'm Jamie Poisson, and tomorrow on CBC's Daily News podcast, Front Burner, we're talking about the Trudeau government then and now, what his new cabinet means for the rocky road ahead. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to our national newsroom in Vancouver. General Motors has announced that it is going to be suing rival automaker Fiat Chrysler. The lawsuit alleging that Fiat Chrysler paid millions in bribes to officials with the United Auto Workers Union to get advantages over GM. Among them, it says, lower labor costs, because the union let Fiat Chrysler hire more temporary and low-paid workers than General Motors. GM says that it is seeking substantial damages but isn't specifying how much. A federal probe of the union has resulted in 13 arrests. Yet another election in Israel is looking more likely tonight after the Blue and White Party failed to form a coalition government. The party led by Benny Gantz couldn't get enough support and returned the mandate to Israel's president. The country now enters a 21-day period where any member of the Knesset who secures a majority would be allowed to become prime minister. That is a tall order, though, given the two parties with the highest seat counts have already failed. Without majority support, an election would be automatically triggered, a third in just 12 months. And in Bolivia today, political leaders called for new elections following the deaths of 8 more people in violent clashes. The interim government presented a bill that would annul the October 20th election and pave the way for a new vote. The former president, Evo Morales, resigned earlier this month after irregularities were found in the election count. Since then, Morales' supporters have been clashing with his opponents. At least 32 people have been killed, including 8 yesterday, when the military moved in on a gas plant, which protesters have occupied for a week. Well, in the middle of a 6-game losing streak, the Maple Leafs have decided to fire their coach, Mike Babcock. We'll have that story for you in 2 minutes.
Welcome back. In the hockey world, the news came like a slap shot from the blue line. You could see it coming, but it was still hard to take. Today, the head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs was fired. Mike Babcock came to the Leafs with quite a resume. A Stanley Cup, 2 Olympic gold medals, coaching Canada. But as Greg Ross reports, his Leafs team this year was way too good on paper to be doing so poorly on the ice.
It's the Leafs' worst start in 4 seasons.
And the Leafs now without a win.
After losing for the 6th straight time last night, Leafs president Brendan Shanahan said the team had no choice but to make a change.
When you think that you know what the right decision is, you have to act on it. And I think that waiting at this point would have just been the wrong thing.
Shanahan says he flew to Arizona today to join the team so he could be the one to break the news to Mike Babcock, along with GM Kyle Dubas.
Seeing as I had been the one that hired Mike, I thought that it was very important for me to get on a plane this morning and fly here and face Mike and be with Kyle to tell him myself that we had made a decision together that we thought was in the best interest of the club.
Babcock's firing comes just 2 months into his 5th season behind the Leafs bench. In May of 2015, Babcock signed a blockbuster 8-year, $50 million contract with the team.
People were ecstatic.
Hockey Night in Canada analyst Elliot Friedman says many considered Babcock to be the right man to end a Stanley Cup drought in Toronto that has lasted more than 5 decades.
Everybody, after the first time they went to the playoffs, you were looking at this and you were saying this is going to be a special team for a long time.
While Babcock was able to get the Leafs to the playoffs in each of the last 3 seasons, he couldn't get the team past the first round. After the disappointing start to this season, Babcock lost the confidence of the team, but his firing has left fans with mixed emotions.
I really like Babcock. It was his time, though. It's just unfortunate that he couldn't make it work.
And they wanted him here, and he was a legend, and now all of a sudden the team's doing poorly, so it's his fault. No, there's more to it than that.
Babcock's successor has already been named. Sheldon Keefe has been promoted from the Leafs minor league affiliate, the Toronto Marlies, and Keefe will coach his first NHL game tomorrow night. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And when we come back, some remarkable video of Humboldt survivor Ryan Strashnitsky taking his first assisted steps. The moment Ryan's feet hit the ground, well, that's our moment tonight.
Ryan Strashnitsky was paralyzed in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash, but his determination to recover has never dulled. Earlier this month, he went to Thailand to receive spinal surgery, hoping to restore some movement. And today, his father posted a video on Twitter showing Ryan walking with help, but his big steps are tonight's moment.
First time he's been moved his legs since before the accident, and yeah, I don't know. I just really don't even have the words. I'm just so incredibly thankful and proud of him and all that they're accomplishing over there. He's as amazed as we are. I think he didn't know that it would come this quickly. It's certainly very, very positive.
For us as a neuro community, we're very, very hopeful that this is going to equate and result in more mobility. I think my ultimate hope, my Christmas wish would be that this becomes the first line of defense for people with spinal cord injuries instead of the last line of defense, and that Canadians will be able to stay at home to receive this type of therapy and not have to travel across the globe to get it done.
Stay tuned, because I don't think this is all there is yet.
So a big question, how is something like this even possible after paralysis? And you know, one of the doctors involved was telling us there's an electrical stimulation device that's implanted around the spine and acts as kind of an amplifier, improving the signals between the brain and the legs. It's pretty incredible.
But even with that description, you know, all of us scrambling for more information, right? And how applicable is this more widely, and what exactly is happening here? Adrian, so many questions still.
Well, and imagine if you're one of the many Canadians who is experiencing paralysis, you know, that you must be desperate to figure out more. I know that Calgary clinic is certainly desperate for more. That is the National for November the 20th. Good night.
Good night.